Well, we got game one of the World Series tonight, Hi. Looking forward to that. Can the Cubbies do it? We'll see. Chicago against the Cleveland Indians. And, of course, game one tonight. Scott Mager's with us right now, nationally renowned attorney, having received nationwide recognition for handling a variety of legal issues at the state, federal, and Supreme Court levels, including service as counsel on the internationally covered Baby T case. He's handled plaintiff and defense cases, represented all levels of clients from individuals to multi-billion-dollar companies, was recently honored by a multi-billion-dollar insurance conglomerate with the National Litigator of the Year, given to only one person. His most recent jury verdict was a $9.4 million verdict, including $1 million in punitive damages. Scott, welcome to Bill Martinez Live. How are you, sir?
Great. Thanks for having me, pal.
Well, appreciate you coming on. I want to talk about this Penn State ex-coach case, Michael McQuary suing, for $4 million in the Sandusky case. Break that down for us. What's going on?
Sure. He essentially was the former wide receiver coach and recruiting coordinator who actually was quarterback there, too, a long-time Pennsylvania fan. And he sued for essentially 3 counts, a whistleblower action, defamation, and misrepresentation. And let me explain each of those. The whistleblower action essentially is trying to say that the school retaliated against him in an unfair way and therefore acted improperly and for his proper reporting of a sexual abuse incident. The defamation action is based on a claim that false statements were made about him because essentially President Spanier suggested that McQuary had committed perjury in making the allegations he made because he was backing, that is, Spanier was backing the other officials, Tim Curley, Gary Schultz, and some of the other people who had categorically said it didn't occur and they were never told. And then the third part is a misrepresentation claim, which is essentially based on the idea that they represented to McQuary, that is, Penn State officials represented to McQuary, that they would take action and take care of this incident, and they didn't do so, and as a result, he suffered damages. And so those 3 counts are in front of the jury in this 2.5 week trial.
How much time passed, Scott, between the time that he brought it to the university's attention to where this broke out? I mean, this was quite a period of time, wasn't there, that went by?
Yes, indeed. In fact, you're talking about, 2001 when this incident was first reported, and nearly a decade later, the incidents finally came to fruition, and throughout this tenure, there was at least according to the criminal prosecutors also, that there was this conspiracy to hide or protect Sandusky and others from public, exposure and to essentially, quell or quash this particular discussion. And then, when it finally came out, as a result of several leaks, they then treated him a little bit differently in that they placed him on administrative leave, didn't pay for his lawyer defense while they were paying for Spanier and Curley and these other guys to be defended criminally. And they also didn't treat him similarly because they, for example, offered other coaches Cobra and severance and other types of things. And for him, they delayed severance. And in fact, it's interesting, when he started testifying, that is when McQuary started having to serve as a prosecutorial witness, all of a sudden the school is then, supporting him and starting to pay back his severance, that they hadn't been paying for a while. And so, you see this kind of disparate treatment, at least according to him, that supports the cause of action.
What a tough situation for Mike McQuary to be in. I mean, here he is. He's a tried and, blue and true, Penn Stater. And for him to go through this, it's just a heartbreak for him, as you say, as a quarterback, as a coach. He lived for Penn State, and then all of a sudden, this is there. He's got Coach Paterno on one side, all the other coaches that he had built relationship with, and I imagine he had some relationship with Jerry Sandusky as well.
He clearly had a love for Penn State. It was his only desire to be working for Penn State, to work up to the ranks, to perhaps, escalate into an eventual head coach position. There was no doubt about his loyalty to the team and to, Paterno and others, and he clearly had relationships which were severed. And, it was a difficult situation because the Penn State made the horrific mistake of coming out initially denying all the allegations and circling the wagons and engaging in this protectionistic, throw everyone else under the bus mentality. And so as a result, people looked at McQuary as almost like, at first, a rat, like he's out telling people, and they misunderstood the reality and the significance of how serious this was. And it was just a retaliation. A lot of Paterno supporters and diehards who just didn't want to admit that he knew, and Sandusky supporters just came at him because of the way in which this was presented by Penn State. So he created a horrific situation for him, and essentially he got singled out and really got torched as a result. And it's interesting.
He became the proverbial scapegoat.
He sure did, and I'll tell you that it's really unfortunate for him because he ends up getting torpedoed out of the industry, and he's not really employable by anybody. And it's a terrible situation because it's ironic that the guy who actually exposes the pedophile is the single guy who suffers the most and ends up being, out of the coaching industry, and so Penn State is faced with a difficult proposition. They probably should have settled this case, but they're faced with a difficult proposition in that they're going to have to defend against this and basically take the position that somehow they put him on administrative leave for security reasons and threats, which is what they're doing during this trial, and that somehow, it wasn't retaliatory in any way, and the new coach, O'Brien had the choice of whoever he wanted, and we couldn't control those decisions, so we couldn't control exactly, who would be selected to continue on. But there's just a unfortunately disparate treatment of McQuary and a really collective mistake in the way in which they approached, first attempting to bury this and then, defending and then trying to figure out a way to get around what would ultimately be a lawsuit by McQuary.
Well, and like you say, I mean, there was such a clear disparate treatment between him and the other coaches. So how do you get around that? Well,
I think they have a big problem. And interestingly enough, you have, some of his claims involved, you guys making false statements. And there isn't any dispute that these people made false statements, that, there was a cover-up of sorts. In fact, Curley, Schultz, and Spanier, these officials who were the president and recruiting heads and heads of the school, actually have been indicted on failure to report child abuse and child endangerment charges, and in fact conspiracy to cover up the entire incident during that time. And it's interesting how their defense was being paid for by the school, but nobody's paying any of the legal fees associating with Mr. McQuarrie's time that he had to spend and testimony that he had to give on multiple different cases.
Well, Scott, we got to leave it there. Thank you so much for bringing us up to date on it. I want to have you back and as this trial progresses and keep us informed. Scott Mager on Bill Martinez Live.
Diabetes is at war with your circulatory system.